All right, welcome back to the podcast. My name is Doug Sandler, along with John Browning. This is the Build Your Life, not just your portfolio. Let's build a better life. Let's make the whole thing really good. I'm excited to be able to chat today with you, Mr. Browning. Welcome back.
All right, good to be back.
So I want to tease this a little bit because this is going to be the best episode you've ever heard if you're in a listening audience. How about that as a tease?
Wow, that's impressive. And man, I feel like I got a lot. I'm kind of nervous now.
Well, when you sent me, hey, I want to talk about this in the upcoming episode, I got to be honest, I didn't even realize this was a thing, but this is a thing. This Mag
Yeah,
7, has this been a thing since the 7 have been like on the rise in the on the stock market? Or maybe
pretty
let's
much.
back up.
Yeah.
Let's define what the Mag 7 is, and then we'll come back and talk about it a little bit. So I'm going to hand it to you because this is where your expertise shines, John. Go ahead.
Well, those of you who are, if you're news junkies or whatever, you may have heard of the Magnificent Seven or the Mag Seven. And prior to that, there was the FANG, FAANG, which was, Facebook and Amazon, Alphabet being Google, and NVIDIA was part of that and all that. So everybody likes to put an acronym on everything. So right now it's the Mag 7, which is, if I can remember them all, it's Apple, Amazon, Google, NVIDIA, Meta, which used to be Facebook,
Mhm.
Microsoft, and Tesla. Was that 7? Did
Yeah,
I
you
go?
got them all. I mean,
All
I'm
right.
like was following along. You came up with Google as opposed to Alphabet, but same idea, same
Same
company.
idea.
There you go.
So those are the ones that have really lifted the whole S&P 500. So you think about that, right? You've got 500 stocks in an index. 7 of them drove that index higher, which what might you conclude based on that about the other 480 whatever of those?
My conclusion would be that those stocks were probably pulled higher as a result of people's putting their attention on that index. Is that not correct?
So some of that was, but what it also tells you is that a lot of those 480 whatever, a lot of them did not do well.
Oh, they do really? Is that the case? See, I would think just the opposite. But what again, that's why I'm here. I'm always in awe of you, John. So tell me why that's the case. Well, how does that work? Why is there a converse relationship from the Mag 7 to all of the other stocks? Is it because they're pulling all of the money into their own stock into their world?
Into their world, into their companies, and into their sector, which is generally speaking the tech sector.
Mm-hmm.
And you have NVIDIA, which is probably the most, I'll put in air quotes if you're watching on YouTube, which is probably the most famous of all the high flying Mag 7 stocks out there, maybe Tesla as well. But there are reasons for all of these stocks, mainly driven by AI, artificial intelligence, and their involvement with that sector of the economy. But they are drawing in, like Amazon, for instance, and Apple. They have these ecosystems, I'll call them, that draw clients, and they've done a good job of competing.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, that brings us to sort of the next point, right? Which is that they become so big. You think about Amazon. A lot of people think that Amazon only delivered packages and they're just a retailer, but they're actually a lot more than that.
Oh yeah.
And they're very involved in artificial intelligence, very involved in huge data centers. So it's a very large portion of their income. And because of that, they've been able to pull a lot of different businesses into them. And right now, the Department of Justice has sort of, I'll call it, declared war on all big companies.
I
And
know it. I listen to many other the podcasts. I listen to the Journal and the Daily, and they're all about, and even Hard Fork, they're all about just what the Department of Justice is doing to try to break up what they call is a monopoly. And I'm just thinking, really? I mean, I don't, like Apple being considered a monopoly because they're a really good brand. I mean, that's the only thing I see is like, hey, let's go after all the really good brands, the ones that have created a solid core community of followers it's a legion of followers that yeah. let's break them up because they're a monopoly. I'm not saying they aren't, but I maybe my definition of monopoly is a whole different thing than the Department of Justice.
Well, I think there's some truth to some of the lawsuits and the issues that are out there. Apple, I think, is a really tough one, right? Because they have plenty of competition with Samsung and the Google system and all that. Amazon, arguably getting close to a monopolistic type of situation there. I can see where that one comes from. I can see Google because of their search engine. They've been
Mm-hmm.
very successful. And,
Yep. Yep.
you know, you think way back, right, when they had these antitrust suits before and AT&T, right? They made this huge investment in phone lines and everything else. And because of that, they were the only ones, right? And so they broke them up into the Ma Bells, and that was probably needed to be done at some point. But at the same time, they spent a lot of money making all that infrastructure. So there's a big debate going on, but it doesn't change the fact that those lawsuits are going on, and those lawsuits are very expensive for
Mm-hmm.
those companies. And there's also a point at which in these Mag 7s that they've come so far, so fast, and they've gotten so much attention that the attention has really moved away from some other really good companies that maybe are their suppliers, or maybe use their technology to great effect and create something brand new and innovative.
Yeah, I can imagine that, like, Meta, for example, or Microsoft specifically, without semiconductors, Microsoft would have a really tough time, and it's pulled probably the whole semiconductor world, as Apple has as well, along for the ride because everybody
Sure.
needs to put those semiconductors inside those Microsoft and Apple systems.
Yeah, exactly. And what can they create and what can they do with the new NVIDIA chips and the new virtual reality from Meta and Alpha and Meta and Apple, right? Apple has their virtual reality headset that you can now actually be aware of everything going on around you, but still literally work with your hands in the air and control this big computer screen. It's fascinating if you haven't seen that. But at the
Microsoft
same
investing billions in AI, along with
AI and Chat
yep,
GPT.
ChatGPT, and certainly Apple doing the same thing, Google doing the same. I mean, they're all going down the same path. The only one that I don't see using AI, but I'm sure they do. I just haven't realized it is. I'm sure AI will be driving our cars coming up soon too.
Well, that's Tesla, right? Tesla's way ahead of the game.
Yep.
And people think that Tesla's a car company, right? Because that's what they're known for. But they're much more than a car company. And, you know, in 2024, they've done very poorly in terms of stock price because the EV or electric vehicle sector of the market has not done well. And certainly they have their issues. On the flip side, they have so much other stuff going on and they're so far ahead of everyone else in terms of, and this not investment advice, by the way, just to put that out there,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
so far ahead of the race for full self-driving, and among other things, including like the Neuralink and the Boring Company, and oh my goodness, there I could go on and on. And the power management technology, they're ahead of the game there. And but right now they're part of that Mag 7, and you get pulled around by the news stories that are out there, including the lawsuits that are out there. Like Tesla is not really embroiled in the lawsuits that Google and Apple and Amazon are embroiled with the being a monopoly, but they are embroiled in a lot of legal issues because number one, their CEO likes to do things that are controversial, but also because they're at the cutting edge. And anytime you have cutting edge technology, a lot of people will put the blame on you for anything bad that happens. So there is just a ton of lawsuits regarding full self-driving, and it caused an accident and all that, and those type of things. And those will continue. And that again will impact the stock price. That's why you can't fall in love with any of these.
Well, I don't know if poor performance was an indicator of future results. I could easily tell you who the next president was going to be from lawsuits. From lawsuits, it's that's crazy. We don't have to get into politics here on the podcast, but it is amazing sometimes that when the light is shined because are lawsuits, people have the ability to make a decision, or everybody's got an opinion. Yes, you would think that lawsuits would adversely affect stock prices, and in some cases it does. In some cases, it just brings attention to those companies that are out there too. So
Yeah.
I try not to read the news because sometimes the news can be a little bit biased as it relates
A
to
little
stock
bit,
prices.
a little bit in both directions, by the way,
Yeah,
depending on
totally.
which news source you're listening to. It's really hard to discern the truth. That's part of what Guardian Rock does is, we dig a little deeper. We do the analysis and try and get the factual data that underlies all the stories and move on from there. And what we're finding right now at this particular moment in time is that some really boring, considered boring sectors of the market are probably the next opportunity. And that's playing to our benefit and has for a bit of time here.
Well, is it because are you saying that because of the lack of volatility for a boring stock as opposed to these tech stocks, the ones that are the innovators and the ones that are in the spotlight all the time are extremely volatile?
Part of it is that it's not that we think that some of these high flyers are bad or they're going to do worse going forward. It's just when we talked, like our last episode, we talked about portion control and being very disciplined and taking your profits and not getting too in love with a particular sector or stock. We're seeing a lot of opportunities in the use cases for the things that companies like Nvidia, Meta, Apple, Microsoft are making possible. Just to give you a quick example of boring but exciting, if you look at the price,
Right?
is what could be more boring than processing garbage?
That's pretty boring. It's a
It's
stinky
pretty boring.
business. Yeah, I agree.
It's a stinky business. And yet you look at a company like Waste Management and you look at that stock price and all of a sudden it looks pretty exciting to me, and again, not investment advice here, but that's what we look for. We look for the where the money isn't. Who was it? Mike Tyson said, "Hit them where they ain't." Right? You look where the attention is maybe not on, but still there's some exciting things happening.
I am going to. I know you're not providing stock advice here, but I never thought of the trash industry. I really never did. But you know what? We create more trash every day
Every
than we
day.
did the day before. And until there's an innovation, there's got to be a way that we can use that trash and run our Tesla, isn't there? There got to be a way
Gotta be. Gotta be.
it's gotta
Yes.
be. Hey, I know we're going to come back next week as we wrap up this episode. We're going to come back next week and we're going to do something that we are going to involve technology. I asked Chat GPT to give me the most common questions that I'd want to know from an advisor or someone that is in the financial world when it comes to their building their philosophy. So I'm curious what Chat GPT is going to ask you, John. I'm gonna bring you a handful of questions next week for the episode. Are you ready to go toe to toe with Chat GPT?
I'm ready. I'm ready to go.
All right. All right. So, for those of you that are in our audience and you don't know how to get a hold of John, the best way to do that, or the easiest way to do that, I wouldn't say the best way, but the easiest way to do that, take out your smartphone, text the word life to 321-421-5213. You'll be asked a couple of questions, really easy for you to answer those questions, and you will be zapped right over to John. And within 3 seconds, John will, John will can't say John will call you in 3 seconds, but he will call you fairly quickly. So John, did I say that right? Text life to 321-421-5213.
Yes. And just for the record, I promise I actually will not call you, but you can schedule time directly on my calendar
Oh, that's good.
because I'm sure they don't want to necessarily be called, but some of them might. So I'll give you that opportunity. It's entirely in your court, whether you want to contact me or not, but I think I might be able to help.
And I know you'll be able to help. And if it's in your hands rather than your court, it's because it's your smartphone. It's in your hand. So
That's true. That's a good point. Yeah, you don't
we
want to
don't
be
want to go
throwing the
to
smartphone.
we don't want to go to court. There's enough going on
There's enough going on with the DOJ. That's
with
right.
court. Thanks for being here, John. Thanks for sharing your expertise, and thanks for being on the podcast one more week. Thanks.
All right. Sounds good.